Good evening, everyone. I'm Susan LaPerla, the Director of Public Services at the Ferguson Library, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to tonight's program with our special guest author, Laurie Gelman, which is sponsored by the Friends of the Library. The Friends do so many things to benefit the library, including running our 2 bookshops and organizing and underwriting many of the wonderful programs we have at the library, such as the Friends Author Series. Another popular event of theirs is the Literary Pub Crawl, which we're so happy to announce will be back again this fall. So thank you, friends, for all you do. Laurie Gelman is here tonight in partnership with Elm Street Books. If you'd like to purchase a copy of Laurie's book, they would welcome your patronage. Tonight, she'll be in conversation with Friends Board member Jamie Cole. Laurie Gelman was born and raised in the Great White North. She spent 25 years as a broadcaster in both Canada and the United States before trying her hand at writing novels. In addition to the new book, Yoga Pant Nation, she is the author of Class Mom and You've Been Volunteered. Laurie has appeared on Live with Kelly and Ryan, Watch What Happens Live, and The Talk, among others. She lives in New York City with her husband, Michael Gelman, and their 2 teenage daughters. Please join me in welcoming Jamie and Laurie to the virtual New Canaan Library.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you, Laurie, for being with us tonight. I know that during your introduction, they mentioned you were a broadcaster in both Canada and the US. Can you talk about your career as a journalist and the transition to writing humor fiction?
Sure. I mean, I started in radio in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I was a traffic reporter at first, but I was also worked in the newsroom. And my boss, my news director, was the one who told me that I had to get out of news. That it just was never going to work for me because I don't know if you remember when Jessica McClure fell into the well and she was there for like 3 days. I was so invested. I was very young. I was like 21, but I was so invested in that story. I wouldn't leave the newsroom until she was done, until she was out and safe. And my boss took me aside and said, news is not for you, my girl. You better go into something else. So they sort of switched me over to entertainment. And that's how I got my first job as a VJ on YTV, which was a sort of rock video station that's kind of like MTV, but Canada's version of it. So I was a VJ there for 4 years. And then I got a job in Miami as a reporter, which is very exciting. And from there, I went to New York to host a talk show with Tom Bergeron. After that, I was at Good Morning America. Then I was at the early show on CBS. I've done many, many things. And my broadcasting career was great until I had children.
Oh. And so tell us about your newest book, Yoga Pant Nation. It was just released yesterday. That's correct, right?
Right. It's the third in the series of the Class Mom books. This time around, Jen Dixon, who's my heroine, is she's battling on a bunch of fronts. She's got a lot of balls in the air. She's dealing with her 5th grader, who it's his final year of primary school. She is the class mom. She's in charge of the school's fundraising committee. So she's tasked with raising $10,000 for the 5th grade. She is dealing with her older daughters who are from a different time in her life, and her parents who are aging, and she's quite worried about them. It seems they're not doing that well.
Sure. I know when reading your first 2 books, I loved the email correspondence that was included. And so were those actual emails that you would send in your time being a class mom?
Absolutely. The first one in the first book is almost verbatim what I sent to my class. And it was sort of announcing my presence with authority, because I thought when I was asked to be class mom, I thought, I have to make this fun for myself, because I would always delete the class mom email. I didn't care what she was, I was like, oh, whatever, I'll find out from somebody else. And I decided that when I wrote them, people were going to look forward to them. And they did. It really worked. I mean, I had fathers emailing me back. I had mothers, they couldn't wait for the next email. And it was really, really fun. And at the end of the year, I would do like prizes for, the fastest response time or the cleverest response and stuff like that. I made it fun because I needed it to be fun for me, but it ended up being fun for the whole class. And that Jen absolutely brought that to her emails as well.
Wonderful. Now, have readers shared with you any of their class mom experiences? Because I imagine that might happen pretty frequently.
Jamie, you have no idea. I go across the country talking about my books, and everywhere I go, afterwards, there's 10 or 15 mothers that come up and say, "Can I tell you my story? Can I tell you my horror story? This is what happened to me." And some of them are just so laugh out loud, ridiculous and funny and great that I'm like, can I use them? Because I'm only one woman. I've had only so many experiences as a class mom. So they're always like, absolutely, you can use that. And I do, I use them in my books.
Wonderful. That's so exciting to know that your readers are included in future books. So
because they want to be.
as much as they approve, right? And so one of the things that caught my attention was that you have such diverse characters within your books. Are your characters based on people you actually know?
No, they actually aren't. They're just based on what you would think a cross section of a regular community in Kansas City, would consist of. And there'd be an Asian population, there would be an Indian population, there'd be an African American population, there'd be a white population, there'd be a Jewish population. I mean, you just like it's everybody, and you realize that. And actually, for Kansas City, there's a Native American population as well, quite a large one. So I try to incorporate as much of that as I can.
That's great. I thought one thing was interesting when I was reviewing for this interview that I read that
you thought one thing was interesting. Oh my gosh, I gotta work
this
hard.
one thing. So it's more a question. So I read that you were once fired from being a class mom in real life. And was that what led to you creating these characters in this book?
What are you talking about? Of course not. No, that was just, yeah, of course it was. I mean, I was, as I told you, I was very involved with getting myself into the class mom mode and making it fun for everybody. And I did it for 4 years. And I was really like, I was well known and well liked as a class mom. And so when you put that much of yourself and your energy into something, you don't expect to be fired from that job. P.S. a job you don't want anyway, and that you volunteered for, you're not being paid for. But when I went back for my 5th year, and I didn't want to, but they needed somebody, so I went back. And I announced my presence with authority, as I always do in my class mom emails. And there was one mother who, she did not get sarcasm or snark. This was not part of her repertoire at all. So she went and complained to the PTA and insisted that I be fired. So the PTA president called me and said, "I'm sorry, you're gonna have to step down. You really insulted this one woman." And I said, "Well, don't you want me to just like change my emails?" And she's like, "Oh, would you do that? Would you change your emails?" And I was like, "No, I will not. I quit." So I was very upset. It hurt a lot. I make jokes about it now. But after the 3rd book, I'm fine with it.
So it's very cathartic for you to write through that entire process.
Extremely cathartic. That's a great way to put it. It just made me, the first one really got me over it, because in the first book, spoiler alert, Jen gets fired. And then, it sort of makes it, she comes back ultimately. I never did. I put a fatwa on the PTA for 7 years. I couldn't do anything for them. Finally went back in like my daughter's senior year to help out a little bit, but otherwise I was not gonna help.
And so I'd love to know how you picked the title for your most recent book, Yoga Pant Nation. Obviously, the pandemic had a lot of us wearing yoga pants because we had given up on real clothing for an entire year and a half. So I'd love to learn more about that.
Well, here's the thing. Any mother knows that we were wearing yoga pants long before the pandemic, and we'll be wearing them long after everybody's back in short skirts and jeans. Believe me, yoga pants are the most perfect piece of clothing you will ever find in your life. They're flattering, they're comfortable. You can get different, renditions of them that go with just about any outfit, including dressy, including flared and cropped. I mean, it is the perfect piece of clothing. So I didn't really think about that as part of the pandemic, but more like when I was thinking of the title, I kept trying to think of a title that would grab. And I love Hillary Clinton's Pantsuit Nation. So I thought,
Sure.
How could I play on that a little bit? And it was Yoga Pant Nation. Not that I'm comparing myself to Hillary Clinton in any way, shape, or form.
That's okay. We won't record this. Oh, wait, I think we are.
This is our secret.
Our secret, just us gals. So my next question is, your characters are so human and very relatable. Can you tell us, how careful are you to avoid creating a character close to someone you might know in real life?
I mean, there's elements of everybody in every character, or somebody that I know in every character, but not anything that would make them feel bad about themselves. I mean, after the first book came out, I had a woman, one of my Asian friends, come up to me and she said, "I'm not a Sami, am I?" And I'm like, "No, why would you think you're a Sami just because you're like, no, I mean, I wouldn't do that to anybody. Plus, she's a lovely woman." So you take little bits of people. Like Ron, the perfect husband in all three books, is based on basically my father-in-law, Ron Gelman. I mean, he's just the greatest man I've ever known. So is my husband, by the way, but you know, I have to remove it from him. He'll get a big pat if he thinks it's all about him. But my father-in-law is this amazing man. So, you know, Ron Gelman is Ron Dixon.
Great. And has anyone taken offense to your portrayal of the school community?
Of which community?
The school community, in terms of the
No,
PTA. And
I've offended many people. I was like, which thing are you gonna, you know, when you started that question, I was like, oh boy, which one is this? Is this the allergy moms, or is this the, you know, the gay community? I mean, I just like, I feel like no matter what you do, you're gonna upset somebody. And it's amazing when I read the reviews that, I mean, I think of the gay community only because I have a lot of gay readers and they're very supportive. But for some reason, I had one horrible review on Goodreads or Amazon, one or the other. And they said, you know, she's homophobic and she's, you know, she makes fun of people who have different pronouns. I'm like, no, I don't. And no, I didn't. And I don't know what you're talking about. But so, you know, no matter what you write, you're going to offend somebody. Listen, people in Kansas City were like, you know, that's not right. It's, you know, you say it's a stone's throw from whatever, and it's not. It's like 3 miles. It's not a stone's throw. I'm just like, all right. You know, you just have to write what you write and then take the shots when they come.
Sure. And so one of our attendees would like to know, how did you do your research to learn more about Kansas City?
Oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed, but I Googled everything. You can find anything on Google. I finally went to Kansas City for the second book, and I was so proud of myself that I kind of got it right. I was like, this is the vibe. Yes, I'm really kind of happy with myself. But you can find anything on Google, including like, what's the best pizza place that everybody loves? Or if there are two pizza places that are competing, what are they? Who owns them? What does it look like in there? And you can see pictures. And it's so much easier than what it used to be a writer.
Sure. Now, during your timing in terms of writing Yoga Pant Nation, I assume you wrote it last year during the pandemic. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And what was your writing like? Did your style change at all because we might have been in quarantine, or you didn't have as much access to the outside world?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I've said, with Google, you don't really need much access. Any shut-in can write a travel novel, unfortunately. But it was a very challenging time because I had spinal fusion surgery in January of 2020, just before the shutdown. And I had, you know, this, I can't, you can see this much of my spine fused. And it was really, really painful and very debilitating for me. So by the time March rolled around and we were locked in, I was already home anyway. But to be home and to not have any way of doing anything else except sitting down and writing, it was actually a gift because it gave me all the time I needed to get the book finished, which before my surgery, I only had like 50 pages written. And then through the pandemic, I wrote the rest of the book. The challenge was trying to be funny because there was nothing funny going on in my life. You know, like I was in a lot of pain and I was stuck at home with my children and my husband and my in-laws. And it was just a really not great time.
Sure, I could see that would definitely be a challenge. And will you write another Jen Dixon book? I know this one just came out yesterday, but I'm excited.
No, believe it or not, I'd only planned on ever writing 3. And then while we were talking about the third book, my publishers, Henry Holt, asked if I would write a 4th as well. And I had never thought about that. But here's the thing about these characters. they're so in me, and they're like my little family, my little fantasy family life, or, you know, so I'm not, it's not hard to go back in there and continue their lives for them because I'm so close to them. We could have ended on Yoga Pant Nation, but we're actually going, Max is going into middle school. And by the way, there's high school, there's college. We got a long way to go. And then the granddaughter, she's starting preschool. So, you know, sky's the limit.
Oh, spoiler alert, it's a girl.
But we don't know who the father is.
Yeah. That's great. Well, I'm so excited to read it. One of the questions we like to ask authors during the author series is, what are your favorite writers?
Oh gosh, I like Lauren Hildebrand. No, Lauren, who wrote The Nightingale? My mind is blank. I'm sorry. She's written The Great Alone. I love her. Kristen Hanna. I love Kristen Hanna recently. And Leanne Moriarty's always been one of my favorites. But I think my favorite author comes from my favorite book of all time. Is Daphne du Maurier's The House on the Strand. I just love that book. And if you like any sort of time travel, like a really smart time travel book that just takes you away to this, you know, romantic, wonderful place, I highly recommend it.
Wonderful. And do you have any books that you recommend that are similar to yours, or even maybe a little bit different, that our readers might be interested in?
I mean, nothing's like my books, you know.
Of course.
But no, I was inspired to write in the beginning by two books I read. One was Where'd You Go, Bernadette? And the other one was, oh gosh, what was it called? What Alice Forgot. Not Still Alice, but What Alice Forgot by Leanne Moriarty. Because the premise of a woman falling off her spin bike and hitting her head and waking up thinking she's 10 years younger, I thought that was so brilliant, and I enjoyed it so much. So those were the two books that sort of got my juices going, saying, you know, I get that sense of humor. I think I have that sense of humor. I could write a book like that.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. So we have a few questions in our chat. One of our one of our attendees is curious to know if pre-pandemic, if you return to visit Canada often.
Of course. Oh my gosh, it's my home and native land. I go there as often as I can. I still have family up there. A few years ago, I was going much more consistently because my parents were both ill, and I was going up all the time to, you know, at least once a month I would go up to visit and make sure, but they've passed now. So I don't go as often, but as soon as Canada opens again and I can go, I'm absolutely going.
And then a follow-up to that was, what has it been like for you with the travel restrictions?
We haven't been traveling much anyway. I mean, the only thing we needed to do really was, as soon as my in-laws got vaccinated, my husband and I wanted to go down to Florida to see them, because we hadn't seen them in a year, and it was really stressing him out a lot that he hadn't seen his parents. He's very, very close to them. Beyond that, I don't feel the need to travel as much right now. I mean, it's limiting because I can't go, you know, to do my Chicago, Kansas, wherever I went for my book tour, or Los Angeles. But that's okay because everybody has Zoom, so you can still get the word out.
Great. And then where did you write in your home? Do you have a creative space or a separate office where you spend most of your time writing for different books?
Well, for the first book, I wrote the entire thing, Class Mom, at Starbucks on 88th and Broadway, and loved it, and was there every single day having my green iced tea in my PB&J bento box, and that's how the whole thing got written. For You've Been Volunteered, I found a workspace where I could write with other people in the room and other people around. Sorry, someone's calling me. I'm just going to decline. Oops, what did I do? Hang on. Sorry. What did I do? Oh my gosh. Hang on. Sorry.
No problem.
Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing because I'm so not techie. Zoom. There we go. Hi. Sorry about that. Yeah, so now for this book, I wrote in the pandemic. I had to write, you know, at home in the backyard basically the whole time. And then the book that I'm writing now, I'm writing in a new office space that I've created in my house for me. For me, Laurie Gelman, the writer.
That's great. So you have a dedicated space, and it sounds like the space changes with each book, and the book really, it changes each book. It is really so dynamic.
Yeah, I like to change it up to have a different view sort of every time, you know?
And then one of the questions I had was, what's on your nightstand right now in terms of reading? What type of things are you reading right now to inspire the next book?
I'm embarrassed to say I have a list of things I want to read, but I can't read while I write. And I've been writing consistently for the past year because I went right from finishing the Lego Pant Nation into writing the fourth book. And I'm still writing the fourth book. And I don't know why, if some authors can do it, I really admire them. If they can read and write at the same time, but I cannot read someone else's story and get lost in that and focus on my own story. So I'm hungry. I'm thirsty for reading. I just can't wait. I think the last thing I read was Where the Crawdads Sing, which I loved, but that was a while ago.
And then another attendee would like to know, many authors speak about their characters like they're real people, just like you have. And was there any event or anything that began the process for you in creating these characters?
Well, I mean, as I said, when I was fired from being class mom, I didn't like run home and decide like, that's it, I'm writing a book. But I was writing a children's book because I knew, you know, I hit 50 and my children were like getting much older, and I thought, I've got to do something. I'll write a children's book. That'll be easy. And which, by the way, it's not. I mean, that whole children's book community and the process is so exact and so specific, and it's just not as easy as everybody thinks. And every time I see somebody who's like a new mom, she's like, I'm writing a children's book. I'm like, yeah, good luck with that. But I was out for lunch with my book agent, and he was telling me, you know, all the 47 reasons why I wasn't going to get this children's book published because they'd been rejected by 47 publishers. And I guess my phone rang or something, and I got a message from one of the parents in my class asking me if I remembered when her conference time was. And I sort of went off on a little diatribe. I was like, oh, it's like having 30 kids. This is ridiculous. They don't remember anything. They no one ever shows up for anything. No, and I'm just like, blah, 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 blah. And he looked at me, Paul Fedorko, he gets all the credit. He looked at me, he said, that's your book. And I said, why would I write about something that annoys the crap out of me? And he's like, because it's funny. And he was right. I went home and I wrote 50 pages like that. And then over the course of 3 years, I wrote the rest of the book. So,
yeah, I definitely find it funny, but also so relatable. And
yeah.
You're welcome. So we do have another question in the chat. It says, you're about to possibly become an empty nester. How is that for you and your husband?
You know, it's hard. When the first one went to college, I cried ugly cries, like for many nights. But then you sort of get the new normal in there, and you realize like, okay, she comes home, she calls me every day. It's, you know, it's almost like she's just busy. She's not home. And then when she comes home, it's like, oh, you know, I forgot there was this much laundry, and you don't put things away and whatever. But now Misha's she's in her senior year at Dalton, so she's gonna be gone next year. So we were thinking about like, let's do some traveling. Let's go here. Let's go there. And then we got a dog. We got a puppy.
Oh, a puppy.
Yeah, I know. What a random. The kids have been asking pretty much since they were born to have a dog. And my husband is always like, no, we're not having a dog. We live in the city. It's not practical. And I don't blame him. I mean, it really wasn't. But my husband's a TV producer, and every year on his show, he does Puppy Week. And there's always these puppies that come on the show for people to adopt because they're from the Humane Society. And for 30 years, he was like, no, nothing. And then he called me and he said, if we're ever going to get a dog, I think I found the dog for us. And it was little Billy. Honest to God, he's the sweetest. It's like having another baby, and you love them that much. Like, it just fills your heart with love. And I can't believe I'm saying this because it's the first time I've ever had a pet. But I don't know what we ever did without him and why we waited so long to have a dog.
You were waiting for the perfect one.
I guess, well, certainly my husband was.
Great. That's so exciting. I know a lot of people who got pets last year that are enjoying that time bonding with them and excited to see them grow up and become the mature puppies and dogs that they are. We do have another question. Are you doing any in-person events to promote the book?
Not right now that I know of. I've been,
Okay.
I'm kind of a lazy author. I'd like to think that I go and do, actually, yes, I am. If you are in the Hamptons on the 23rd between 4 and 6 at the Southampton Inn, I'm doing a book event with bedside reading. It's called Sip and Sign from 4 to 6 on the 23rd of July. I don't know why that's like coming to me just now, but I'm really glad I remembered it because that is my like one big, showing this summer.
Okay, great.
If anyone wants to invite me, I'll be there. I'd love to go.
And it looks like we have another question. Have you been successful with Zoom promotions of your book versus in-person book tours?
Well, this is the first time I've been having to do anything by Zoom.
Okay.
And the book just came out yesterday. So anybody who had a book out last year really had it hard. They had it, because no matter what, it's always better in person. People are more likely to buy the book. They get more excited about it than, just being in front of a screen. But, desperate times called for desperate measures. So you do what you have to do. I can't wait to be in person again when I can be, because I think meeting the people that read your books and hearing their stories is one of the greatest joys of being an author.
Definitely, I agree that that personal connection and interaction is something I've definitely missed during the pandemic as well. And then another question from the chat: what does it look like when you're not writing? So, what are some of your hobbies that you enjoy?
When I'm not writing, I am reading. Definitely.
Okay.
I'm being mom and now dog mom. I love to cook and I love to exercise. I'm really into walking and listening to podcasts these days. Since my spinal fusion surgery, I have not been able to do the aggressive stuff that I used to do, but I do. I love to walk. I walk like 3 or 4 miles a day and listen to podcasts, and it takes my head away from where it is usually, which is in the book or in my troubles or my children's troubles or whatever. That's a really big release for me in a day.
Sure. And so, since you mentioned podcasts, who are you following in terms of podcasts?
Okay, well, I listen to the Daily every day, the New York Times Daily. I listen to The New Abnormal because I went to, Molly John Fast and I went to this, our children are in the same grade and have been since preschool. So I've known her for 16 years. And I also listen to the Smartless. Have you heard of that one?
Mm-hmm.
It's with Will Arnett and Jason Bateman and Sean Hayes, and they just are very, very funny. They always have a guest on, but the greatest part is just listening to the three of them banter. And when on the weekends, I listen to This American Life.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for sharing that. It's great to know a little bit more about you and your interests. So I know you have to leave a little bit early tonight because you're preparing for an interview with Andy Cohen. When will that be airing?
It airs Friday night. Yeah, I'm going on Watch What Happens Live, which I love so much. And I love Andy. He was my boss when I was at CBS. I told you I worked for The Early Show. I was the pop culture correspondent, which is a fancy name for entertainment reporter. And he was in charge of entertainment for the network. So he was my direct boss. So it's so funny now to see him like 20 years later, and us, he's doing so well. He's on air when before he was just a suit. He was just an executive.
That's great. And then we have another question from the chat. How long does it take you to write a book?
It depends. The first year, it took me 3 years. The second one took me about 14 months. And this one took me about 5 months total. And I'll tell you why. I've discovered the secret of writing a book. And it is, and get your pens out if you want to write this down, because this is a pearl.
I got one.
You got it? You got it?
Yeah.
You got to sit down and write the book. You cannot, there's no shortcut. There's no easy way. There's no magic bean. There's no secret, remedy. There's nothing. You have to do the time. And I didn't realize that with Class Mom, the first book. I would just sit down when the muse hit me, and I'd like write a few things, and then and it literally about 2 years in, I was like, man, this book is just not getting done. And then I realized I have to like actually sit down and write it. So the second time around was more what you would normally think of for a book that is just a fiction book that doesn't require a lot of research. It was like sort of 15 months. But this one, because I was in COVID and I had nothing else to do, I mean, nothing. So it was, 5 to 6 hours a day of just, jamming out the pages.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. I think Susan has some closing remarks, but we are so excited. I can't wait to get the book. I've already pre-ordered it. So
oh, thank you.
Definitely.
It's really fun to be here. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you, Laurie, so much. That was a great conversation. And
Thanks.
I have to admit, I haven't read your books. My Class Mom
None
books
of them?
behind me.
None of them?
But
Not one?
no, not yet. But I'm going to, because they do sound like a lot of fun, and it sounds like your read-alikes are right up my alley. So I'm really looking forward to reading them. I'll put them on my bedside table and laugh myself to sleep, which will be great. And Jamie, thank you so much for leading the conversation with Laurie. It was great, and I'm sure the people who are watching agree. It was a wonderful program. So we wish you the best of luck in your future writing career and everything that comes your way. I'm sure it's going to be wonderful. So thank you for sharing your time with us.
Thank you so much. Bye.
You take care.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.